Hello children, in today's class we are going to study Coleridge's views on imagination and his views on fancy and imagination, how he distinguishes primary imagination from secondary imagination. So these are the topics that we are going to see in today's class. So let us move to the class. See, Coleridge has touched almost every shore of thought. He was the mightiest poet, critic and psychologist of his generation. He also tried to revitalize the old order of ideas in philosophy, theology, and political theory. So his life was a tragedy of, that is how critics say, Coleridge's life was a tragedy of unfulfilled possibilities and wasted powers. We all know that he was a slave to opium. So though a weaker man than Wordsworth, he was the greatest of the lake poets. So in the realm of the supernatural, Coleridge reigns supreme. By dealing with the supernatural as a psychic phenomenon, he opened out a new literary vein. A true romantic, Coleridge revolts against the Augustan conception of poetry as an art to instruct. So that is what Augustan conception of poetry. So art, the purpose of any art is to instruct. But to Coleridge, the aim of poetry is to provide pleasure. That is pleasure through the medium of beauty. So not only pleasure through the medium of poetry. And many writers, many philosophers, many psychologists had influenced Coleridge. So Coleridge was a man of wide and comprehensive reading, and a writer's views and attitudes are consciously or unconsciously molded and formed by all that he reads. And he also was influenced by Kant, Hegel, Schelling, Schiller. These are German transcendentalists. Okay. And if you see, the associationists like Hartley and Hume, they also influenced Coleridge. And David Hume says the mechanist view of the formation of human character and personality. So according to him, a poem is the mind receives to Hume, the mind receives impressions of the external world through the senses. And such sense perceptions, impressions, and the sensations are compounded by the mind into ideas, and simple ideas are compounded into the ideas of greater and greater complexity. And according to the associationist theory, the human mind is reduced merely to a passive and inactive recipient of impressions and sensations from the outside world. So this is the view of the associationist like Hartley and Hume. So according to Hume, the human mind is reduced merely to a passive and inactive recipient. But to the German idealists like Kant, it is different. So Coleridge came under the influence of the German philosophers who took a more active view of the imagination. For them, the human mind or imagination is not a mere passive agent. But if you see, to associationists, human mind is a passive and inactive recipient. But to the German idealist, human mind or imagination is not a passive agent, but it is an active and creative power. Coleridge rejected the associationist view of imagination, and he subscribed or he followed the Kantian view of imagination as an esemplastic power. So he liked the word or the term used by Kant, esemplastic power. So he followed this esemplastic power. So what is this esemplastic power? It is an active power which shapes, molds and recreates. So listen please, esemplastic is a term used by Kant, and esemplastic power means esemplastic power is an active power which shapes, molds and recreates. So art to Coleridge or to Kant is not a mere imitation of nature. It is a recreation. This is how they define art. Art or poetry, our imagination is recreation. It is not mere imitation. So beauty is nothing objective. It is imparted to the external world by the observer. Okay, so the soul of the artist fuses with the external world and transforms and recreates it. It is the idea which fuses and unites. So this is actually isemplastic. So he was influenced by this term. Coleridge was influenced by Kant's isemplastic power. And I have broadly tried to define his views, Coleridge's views on imagination. So imagination is the basic and the most important creative faculty in a poet, and impossible to write a poem without imagination. And Coleridge calls imagination a magical and synthetic power. Moving to the next one, imagination and fancy. See, Coleridge is the first critic to differentiate between imagination and fancy. So the first literary critic also to distinguish between primary and secondary imagination. Through his theory of imagination, Coleridge revolutionized the concept of artistic imitation. So to Coleridge, poetic imitation is neither a servile copy of nature, nor is it the creation of something, entirely new and different from nature. So poetry is not imitation. That is what he says. Poetry is not imitation, but creation. But it is creation based on the sensations and impressions received from the external world. So poetry is not imitation. It is a sensation. It is a creation based on the sensations and impressions received from the external world. So such impressions are later, shaped, ordered and modified, and opposites are reconciled and harmonized by the imagination of the poet. And in this way, actually poetic creation, it takes place. And imagination and fancy, let us study this imagination and fancy. Imagination and fancy are actually the two activities of two different kinds. Okay, two activities of two different kinds. So fancy is not a creative power. Fancy is not a creative power at all. It only combines what it perceives into beautiful shapes. But if you see, imagination is imagination is, as we have already seen, imagination is a magical and synthetic power. So here fancy is not a creative power at all. It only combines with what it perceives into beautiful shapes, but like imagination, it does not fuse and unify. So the difference between the two is the same as the difference between a mechanical mixture and a chemical compound. This is a very important example. Just listen. So the difference between, to understand the difference between imagination and fancy, he cites an example. That is the difference. It is like the difference between a mechanical mixture and a chemical compound. See, in a mechanical mixture, we add a number of ingredients. So if you see in a mechanical mixture, a number of ingredients are brought together and they are mixed up. But even after mixing many ingredients, the ingredients will not lose their individual properties. Okay, even after mixing the ingredients, in mechanical mixture, the ingredients will not lose their individual properties. They still exist as separate identities. But in a chemical compound, if you see, the different ingredients combine to form something new. Okay, for example, to prepare tea, what are the ingredients that we use to make or to prepare tea? We have to add milk, we have to add sugar, we have to add tea powder. So when we add all these three, milk, tea powder and sugar, we get a new ingredient, new thing. So that is tea. So similarly here, in chemical compound, the different ingredients combine to form something new. So the different ingredients no longer exist as separate identities. They lose their respective properties and fuse together to create something new and entirely different. So that's why I have given you this example, preparation of tea. So you will not, in tea you will not be able to find milk or sugar. So as I said, they lose, all these different ingredients no longer exist as separate identities. They lose their respective properties and fuse together to create something new and entirely different. So a compound is an act of creation, while a mixture is merely a bringing together of a number of separate elements. So there is a difference. So fancy is like a chemical compound. Okay, I'm sorry, fancy is a mechanical mixture and imagination is a chemical compound. So thus, imagination creates new shapes and forms of beauty by fusing and unifying the different impressions it receives from the external world. So as I said, fancy is not creative, it is a kind of memory. It arbitrarily brings together images, and even when brought together, they continue to retain their separate and individual properties. So they receive no coloring or modification from the mind. It is merely mechanical juxtaposition and not a chemical fusion. So for Coleridge, fancy is a drapery, that is dress of poetic genius, but imagination is its very soul, which forms all into one graceful and intelligent whole. And next we will move on to the next one. Imagination. See, according to Coleridge, imagination has two forms, primary and secondary. So primary imagination is merely the power of receiving impressions of the external world through the senses. And as I said, the primary imagination is universal. So kinds of imagination, primary and secondary imagination. Primary imagination is universal. It is possessed by all, and it is not. Primary imagination is an involuntary act of the mind. It is the power of perceiving the objects of the sense, both in their parts and as a whole. So it is, as I said, it is an involuntary act of the mind. The human mind, receives impressions and sensations from the outside world. Consciously or unconsciously, it imposes some sorts of order on those impressions. It is what type of order? If you see, the impressions that are received from the external world will be reduced to different shape and size, so that the mind is able to form a clear image of the external world. So it is in this way that clear and coherent perception becomes possible. So primary imagination is an involuntary act of the mind. It is universal, possessed by all. So primary imagination is merely the power of receiving impressions of the external world through the senses. But coming to secondary imagination, it is peculiar. Secondary imagination, it is a secondary imagination which makes artistic creation possible. Secondary imagination is more active and conscious in its working. Actually, it requires secondary imagination requires an effort of the will, volition, and conscious effort, and also it works upon what is perceived by the primary imagination. So its raw materials are actually supplied by the primary imagination. The sensations and impressions supplied by the primary imagination is actually a raw material for the secondary imagination. And by the effort of the will and the intellect, the secondary imagination actually selects and orders the raw material and reshapes and remolds it into objects of beauty. So it is esemplastic. This is what esemplastic. So secondary imagination is esemplastic. It is a shaping and modifying power which by its plastic stress reshapes objects of the external world and steeps them with the glory and dream that never was on the sea. Okay, this is what Coleridge says. So this secondary imagination is the root of all poetic activity. So secondary imagination is the root of all poetic activity. It is the power which harmonizes and reconciles opposites, and hence Coleridge calls it a magical synthetic power. So this is what we saw in the beginning. So he calls secondary imagination as a magical synthetic power. So it is through the play of this unifying power that nature is colored by the soul of the poet, and the soul of the poet is steeped in nature. So the identity which the poet discovers in man and nature results from the synthesizing activity of the secondary imagination. So if you see the differences, the primary and secondary imagination do not differ from each other in kind. The difference between them is 1 of degree. So secondary imagination is more active, more a result of volition, more conscious and more voluntary than the primary one. So this is the basic difference. So secondary imagination is more active. The primary imagination, on the other hand, is universal, with the secondary is peculiar privilege enjoyed by